to finish up this head wrap. So this is where we left off last time in the last episode 4, and now we're at step number 5, where we're going to insert elastic into the casing and base the ends. Now it says to cut 3 3/4 inches long of elastic, and I did this. Let me get the elastic here. You'll notice I actually have 2 pieces. One is a little longer and one is the 3 3/4 length. Now I did this, but when I stretched it across to the ends, the sides at both ends of the casing, it's a bit taut, so it snaps back. I think it should be just a little longer. I don't know if it has anything to do with the sizing, because I chose the larger size. So I was wondering about that, or if it has to do with the particular elastic. This is a 1/4 inch black elastic. And then I said, let me check the envelope packet. And when I did with the notions, it actually says for E, view E, that is the one that I'm doing. View E, I'm supposed to use 1/8 of a yard of 1/4 inch elastic. So that works out to be, actually 1/8 of a yard is 4.5 inches, and not the 3 3/4 inches here. So I'm striking a happy medium. I'm actually going for the longer piece, which is the 4.5. It gives a little bit of stretch and recovers to the 4.5 within the casing here. The distance between this side and that side is actually 3 3/4, so maybe that's the reason why. But then it's being stretched out to be based at the sides, at the ends. So that's what's causing the smaller piece to be a little bit taut for me. So I think that's the only adjustment I'm going to do to these instructions. I think I'm going to go for the longer length, 4.5 inches long. So I hope that works out. Alright, so grab a small safety pin and hook it through the one end of the elastic like that, leaving the other end free, and have the casing here. So I'm just simply gonna feed the casing through, feed the safety pin through the hole. Alright, so the safety pin will tug along the elastic with it. Alright, so it's just a feeding motion all the way down till we reach the other end. When you see that you're getting to the end of the elastic, you need to secure it. I'll probably just tack it with a little pin to make sure it doesn't slip inside. Alright, like that, or if you have a clip, you could clip it. And I continue feeding along the way. So that's all that I'm doing. When you reach to the end, you have to make sure that your elastic is smooth and not curled up inside the casing as you continue along. And we'll get it through at both ends. Once it's at both ends, I'll secure it and base the sides. Okay, so this was a little bit tricky. It actually slipped on me one time and I had to do it over again, because you're dealing with a small piece of elastic that is stretched fully out. And so what I had to do was pin here to secure the elastic inside, and left a little edge out at both sides. Alright, secure with another pin here to make sure it didn't slip again, and then base the sides, a stitch down here to hold it. So as you can see now, it's then just rearrange the little gathers and so on. I did all of that after I had made sure that the elastic was flat and smooth within the casing. So take your time while working the elastic through. So we are moving on to step 6 and 7. Step 6 is the band. So we have 2, right? It was cut in the fold and then open out to form one long piece. So there's one, and there's a second one that is going to be used as the facing. So the first one, you notice it's gray, so we're going to turn that on the right side, and then we're just going to reinforce a few stitches right by where we marked the small circles. So I have it opened out here. The small circles, I'm not sure if you're going to see on the camera, but there's one here, very faint circle there at the top on the curve, and there is another one all the way to the other end, a very small dot. So we're just going to stitch through that a little bit to reinforce it, and then it says to clip it to the small circles. That's one piece. And on the facing piece now, we're going to turn in the seam allowance between those same small circles. So that's the step we're on now. So we're looking at the visor here. One of the visor section has been interfaced. This is iron-on interfacing. Should really be, the instructions really call for sewing interfacing, but this one is an iron-on, and so I have ironed it on. It's a little bit light, but I'm going ahead with it, and so I've matched it right sides to the other visor section piece and pinned, and so we are actually at step 10. Step 10 is basically after we had attached the interfacing, and we're going to do step 9 rather. I'm going to stitch the sections together. So I'm going to be stitching right along the curve of the visor, and I'll be leaving the inner curve, the upper edge, open. That actually is step 9, not yet 10. 10 is after I've stitched it around the curve. I'll be turning it out by the seam allowance, and then I'll be neatening it up. I'll be edge stitching the outer edge and stay stitching the upper edge. So that's the step that we're at now. Okay, so we have a nice even stitch around the edge of the visor, and we will turn it out. Okay, so the visor is always stitched. I just need to press it out. Here's a stitching at the upper edge, and then we edge stitched along the outside edge. So now we have actually completed step 10, the stay stitching and the edge stitching. So I'm going to move on now to step 11 and pin the visor on the right side of the band. When that is complete, I'll be pasting it, and there are two larger circles on this edge to match the visor too, so we pin it and baste it in place. We're almost at the finish, step 11. After that we have step 12, which is simply putting the facing on top of the band with the visor, and we'll be stitching the seam allowance all around and leaving an opening to turn it out. Once we have turned it out, we'll press it and attach it to the centerpiece and the side pieces that we had already stitched together, and that will be our head wrap. So I'm gonna go ahead and do those steps, and then I'll show you. So we're at step 11, where we will adjust the baste the visor onto the band. Okay, so this band is on the right side, and it's the piece that we had clipped to the small circles in step 6. Alright, so on this piece, let's see, right here we had reinforce and then clip to the small circle. On this piece, which is on the right side, we're going to pin the visor in the center. Now, the center markings, there were actually two larger circles at each end here. So we had to match those and pin that in place. And then because we're dealing with a curve now, we have to do some clippings, and the clippings are only done on the visor piece. So these clippings are done to facilitate this piece matching up exactly with the band within the large circles. Okay, so you take your time with that and fitting it with a curve. As you can see, I've used quite a bit of pins. It's pinned in place. I'm about to baste that on and then move on to step 12, which is putting the facing piece on top of this, matching the right sides and stitching in the seam allowance. But right between the small circles, we'll be leaving a gap so that we can turn it out to the right side. So that's where we are now. Okay, so I have stitched the band to the visor. Right, this is the ends. It's long, so I haven't really opened it out. This is the ends that have been pressed together, and in the middle here is the gap that we left open between the small circles. The other end of the band pressed and even out. Okay, so we're on the right side here looking at the open edge, and now all that remains is for me to take the piece that we had with the center and the two sides, and what I am doing now is pinning it just to the band that we had reinforced, the one that was clipped to the small circles. That's the one that we're using, not the facing piece. The facing is going to be left open. We're going to pin this all the way around one side at the front. Right, I'm continuing pinning. I've stopped here, but I'll have to continue on down to the other side, all the way down until I reach to the end by the elastic, and then I'm going to stitch it. And once I have stitched it, then these will be, there will be a seam here that will be pressed and turned in towards the band, and we will use the facing piece of the band, and we will slip stitch to cover it, so that the insides are neat. So this is the last lap, and this is the pinning process of the sides and the center to the band. So the hat is completed, the band is attached. This is the outside seam after I stitched on the band, and then I turned it inside, and the facing piece was slip stitched all around. So the hat is completed. Another project finished by Sew Another. On review though, I think I would prefer having something lined, so I'll look into how to line a hat to cover the inside seams. And also I believe I used the, well, I've had a very light interfacing, so that isn't the right interfacing for the visor. It should be a little bit more stabilized than it is here, but it's done, and it's the first time making it, and the project was a good one, so I see myself making some others. So I'll end with a few snapshots of what it looks like. Thanks for watching. Bye.